Good evening, everyone. Welcome into the second edition of the Overtime NFL Divisional Playoff Edition, where we're covering the action on Sunday, January 14th, 2018, with Jacksonville heading into Pittsburgh to take on the Steelers. And we got on the night docket, we got New Orleans going into Minnesota to take on the Vikings. So it's me, Johnny Fiorenza, the host, and my co-host.
How we doing, guys? This is Bryce Roseborough. I'm pretty excited about these games. We start out in Jacksonville, or in Pittsburgh, I do believe. That's going to be a cold one. What's the weather forecast looking like out there, John?
We got a high of 19 degrees and we got a low of 14 degrees on Sunday in Pittsburgh.
So a chilly one. You would definitely think to yourself and say, well, that puts the Steelers firmly in the favorite corner, especially with that weather and that field. They're used to that.
I completely agree. And we're going to throw this stat out here first, guys, get it out of the way. The Pittsburgh Steelers in their last 10 games below 32 degrees. We got 9-1 straight up for Pittsburgh while taking 7-2 against the spread in those same games. And that is when it is below 32. And as we just said, the high is 19 degrees on Sunday in Pittsburgh. And you got a Florida team flying up there to do that. They're used to those sunny skies, mid-60s in the winter, mid-50s at the coldest usually. So it's going to be a little chilly.
I don't think it's fair to discount the Jacksonville Jaguars because of the weather. They run that football. They don't rely on Blake Bortles to throw it a lot. They're gonna want to physically dominate it. They're gonna be playing defense. You got to take that stat into consideration, but I don't think that should be your coup de grace. I don't think that needs to be your North Star for this game. I think there's a lot going on here. But when you look at that quarterback matchup and you're saying to yourself, well, Big Ben is the number 6 all-time quarterback in wins in the playoffs, and that's significant.
Absolutely. That is a huge factor here. And when you look at Blake Bortles, everyone looks at him as a guy who can't get the job done, a guy who is incapable. He turns the ball over. There's a lot of negative outlooks on Blake Bortles, and rightfully so. I mean, he really can't move the ball down the field with anyone in the league. I would really take most quarterbacks over him, but you got to that Super Bowl defense. That is a Super Bowl defense.
I'm glad you brought that defense up. So I have a couple quick hitter stats for you guys. So this is what Jacksonville leads the league in. They lead the league in sacks in 47, takeaways with 30. They've allowed the fewest points this season with only 202. For a little bit of reference, Minnesota is number 2 with 239. And they have the most points saved this season with 13 points per game. So, I mean, they're allowing Blake Bortles a lot of room here. Like that's what a great defense gives you.
Yeah, I completely agree. And, you look at that defense, you got the number 1 pass defense in the NFL, equipped with guys like A.J. Bouye and Jalen Ramsey, both Pro Bowlers this season, and going up against the Pittsburgh Steelers with a number 3 ranked pass offense in the NFL. And when you look at that, though, you have to take it with a grain of salt because the best wide receiver in the NFL, Antonio Brown, tore his calf 3 weeks ago. He will not be 100% in this game. But he'll be on the field, and you can count that. I mean, that'll be a fact, and he'll give it his all. But
it's a massive factor.
It is. It is a huge factor. Jalen Ramsey can absolutely shut down a 70% Antonio Brown.
But you look at that passing offense, and you say to yourself, well, Antonio Brown's out there running, 70%. But Juju Smith and Martavius Bryant and Eli Rogers, those are all very capable guys that can drive. They can make plays down the field. I mean, they get first downs. I mean, this is a game that if Pittsburgh ever gets up by 10 points, it's over.
Yeah, I completely agree because you can't really trust Blake Bortles to bring you back in a game like this at all with no experience. I got a couple more stats to throw before we move on to the next game. Only 4 times in NFL history has a team won a game scoring below 14 points in the wild card round. And Jacksonville did that last week with a 10-3 victory over the Buffalo Bills. And this week, every team that has done that before, the past 4, they lost straight up and against the spread the next week, 0-4. So Jacksonville is in bad company with that one.
And one quick thing, guys, you're looking at the spread, and, everybody loves taking an underdog. So the Jacksonville Jaguars are 12-5 against their spread over their last 17 against Pittsburgh, and they're 4-1 over their last 5. So, there's hope there for you. I can feel it. I understand if you make that bet, but betting against Big Ben, against or at home, buyers beware. So, all right, Johnny, what's next on the slate for us?
Next on the slate here, we got New Orleans heading into Minnesota to take on the Vikings. We got the Vikings at a 4-point favorite, total sitting around 46.5, 47. So to get into it first, the New Orleans Saints have had a fantastic season, and I want you to talk about that a little bit because you had Alvin Kamara as your fantasy running back, so you know all about the Saints. You've watched them more than I have this year.
So these New Orleans Saints are really a tale. It's almost a tale of two teams here, because we have the team that showed up the first 8 weeks, and then we have the team that we are seeing now over the last 8 weeks of the season, 9 counting the Carolina Panthers. So that's a team that, when they involve Mark Ingram and Alvin Kamara, and those guys are getting 8 to 15 touches, they will win football games. It's like when they're firing on those cylinders, and they've got a defense, they've got big-time playmakers in Cameron Jordan, Marshawn Lattimore. They've got guys who can do the damn thing, that can hold leads. They have big-time playmakers. Michael Thomas is a guy that stretches the field. He's putting up 100 yards a game over the last 6 games. There's a lot to like about this New Orleans Saints.
Yeah, I completely agree.
When you look at it, and then you also have to love Drew Brees versus Case Keenum. Case Keenum's been fantastic, but you're looking at a Hall of Fame quarterback here.
Yeah, you're looking at a Hall of Fame quarterback here in Drew Brees, who is going to be throwing probably a lot in this ball game. You got a front 7 in Minnesota who is highly capable of, putting up stops and putting up run stops in particular. You got Everson Griffin up there. You got guys who can come in that linebacking core and make an impact. Anthony Barr is going to be wreaking havoc back there all day. And just to get into a little bit of the Saints, if we're still on that, talking about the pass rush and the run offense, you got 2 of their starting tackles. Pete and Streif will be out in this contest. So that is a huge loss, and a team that really likes to, bully at the offensive line and kind of, push back and get some resistance on the run game.
And we saw the Carolina Panthers, and they were able to take away Alvin Kamara and Mark Ingram. Now, that doesn't bode well for it happening 2 weeks in a row. It never has. It didn't happen one time this season. But the Carolina Panthers defense is not as impressive as the Minnesota Vikings, however capable they are.
I completely agree. You look across the board on the secondary. You got Harrison Smith, who has had his best season of his career. You got Xavier Rhodes, who notoriously, you'll see an Instagram post from ESPN about who he covered the week before because he shut him down. You have Tremaine Brock, who's playing great number 2 coverage. And you got Terrence Newman, who somehow is still in the league.
The guy has built a Hall of you got a ballot for me. I'll give him the Hall of Fame.
Terrence Newman has been an Iron Man. I don't know how he does it, but he's basically played, who knows, 20 years at this point.
Vegan.
So when you look at the trenches here, the O-line for the Vikings, they are pretty similar. The Saints are missing 2 guys. The defensive line advantage is absolutely Minnesota. The running back advantage is in the Saints' favor. There's no question. You lost Dalvin Cook when you're the Vikings. We don't have to go over the quarterback. We've already talked about the Hall of Fame quarterback that Drew Brees is. And you have the wide receiving core, which does favor the Vikings with Thielen and Diggs and Rudolph in a secondary that's going to miss Kenny Vaccaro in this game.
Secondary is going to miss Kenny Vaccaro, but, I mean, the Saints defense has been a top 10 defense all season. They've been able to play through injuries. I see this being a close contest. I wouldn't say either offense or defense on either team is going to be a liability. I think it's going to be a really highly skilled, highly contested game. But, I do have some pretty interesting stuff here. So, since 1990, okay, top 2 defenses versus a top 2 offense. The top 2 defense has won 6 out of 7 of those contests. Okay? And which team has the better defense?
The Vikings.
Yep. And, they're both dome teams, so home field advantage is almost negligible to me. So I just have to look to myself and say, all right, which team is going to get down to the fourth quarter and dominate physically, play defense, and get stops?
Right.
And it just seems like it's the Minnesota Vikings. I mean, they've been the best team all season.
Yeah, and when you look at the numbers, these numbers don't lie. Minnesota has covered the spread in 9 of their last 11 games, have won the 11 of their last 12 straight up. They have won all 5 of their last home games, and they have covered 7 of the last 9 games, guys, against the New Orleans Saints, while also taking 6 of those straight up at home against the New Orleans Saints. Their last 7 matchups in Minnesota against New Orleans, they are 6-1 straight up.
And you're also looking at Drew Brees, who's dropped 3 of his last 5 away playoff games. I mean, this is another one of those classic games where it's like you load up on the Vikings, everything tells you everything, every analytics, every stat, everything's telling you it's got to be the Minnesota Vikings. And Drew Brees goes out there, throws for 310 yards, 3 touchdowns. And you go home thinking to yourself, well, fuck me, Drew Brees did it again. And yeah. I think you just have to accept that. I mean, you got to make a smart gambling decision at some point.
Yeah, I completely agree. And, all the numbers are in favor of the Vikings here. But, the typical mind just looks at Case Keenum versus Drew Brees. And they're just kind of thinking, I'm going with the Hall of Famer against Case Keenum, who was a laughingstock a couple of years ago.
And you're not wrong to do throw – and there are some people that will look at all these numbers, take them in their hands, and just –
Yep.
Because it doesn't matter. When you're looking at Drew Brees, you're saying to yourself, well, I've got one of the top 10 quarterbacks that has ever laced up in this game. That gives me a really good shot to win.
I completely agree. And it's hard to go against Drew Brees in the spot. So that's going to lead us into our best bets. We've gotten through all the numbers we had for you guys today. So, Bryce, you want to start it off with your best bets for Sunday, January 14th, divisional round action?
So my best bet, and it's going to come a little contradictory of all of my Minnesota Vikings talk, but Saints +4 to cover. Drew Brees is walking in there. He's taking care of business. He's not losing by a touchdown. He's not losing by 2 field goals. It's going to be a close, contested game. It's going to be a lot of fun. And, I'm not going to lie. I've already taken the Minnesota money line, so I'm hedging it up a little bit.
I got you. I don't hate that. I hit a perfect mill on the Saints and Panthers last week, so I completely see where you're saying on that. So when we look at this, my best bets for the weekend, I'm looking at a 2-team teaser, a 6-point teaser. If you can get the Steelers down to -1 from a -7, and you can get that under on the game from Pittsburgh, Jacksonville, to 41 to 47. This game's going to be all run all day. And I think the Steelers, if they get a lead, how is Blake Bortles going to lead them back into the game? I just don't see that happening. I think Joe Hayden is supposed to come back for this game. and that could be big for them. He hasn't played in the last few weeks, so who knows really how healthy he is, but he is supposed to make an appearance in this game as well. I like the Steelers to win the game by more than one, and I like the game to go under 47.5. And that would be
that under.
That would be my best bet.
That's a great under. I think you're kidding yourself if you think this Steelers Jaguars game is going to be a high scoring affair. It's going to be a defensive football game.
Yeah, I completely agree. And you look at Big Ben; he threw 5 picks last time against Jacksonville. I don't think he's going to do that again, but they didn't move the ball at all. That game went under. That game went under the number that I'm taking. That went 39, and that was pretty high for that matchup.
I 100% agree. I think is there any college basketball we got to talk about? I know maybe these Red Raiders might have beat West Virginia. I think I might have saw that.
They pulled out a nice victory there.
They didn't cover though, so if you bet that, I'm sorry.
Hey, you got hurt by a dagger.
Carter, he fucked me.
You got hurt by a dagger last-second three.
A last-second three with 0.8 seconds, man.
Anyone who does bet sports understands that shit happens, and it sucks when it happens to you. But any college basketball action, I'm currently 14 seconds from Kentucky winning, but like I said, guys, in the last video, Gonzaga -13. They haven't played yet. Hop on Gonzaga against San Francisco to get the job done tonight. They have won their average conference games this year by 19 points. So I'll take that 2-play teaser that I mentioned and the Gonzaga Bulldogs tonight.
All right, guys, check us out at the Overtime on Twitter, and that's the OVR time. The Overtime on Twitter, and appreciate you guys watching.
Yeah, absolutely, guys. We'll be back tomorrow with a little more basketball action and some college hoops, and we will be back. And maybe if we have to talk a little more NFL, if something changes, some crazy news happens, we'll see. So we will be back tomorrow with some more hoops action, and good luck with all your wagers. This is the Overtime signing out.
Red boys.